Come on, get your cockles. Je voudrais. Yeah, what's that? Les petits manger. Breakfast, is it? Deux billets. Two tickets, s'il vous plaît. Any time, governor. Come again. Down and out in Paris and London. The podcast. Chapter 9. Who'd have thought it? Hey, Chapter 9. And look at this. The time marker at the beginning. For 3 more days, we continued traipsing about looking for work. So, just as we'd expect in a travelogue in this style, this personal memoir, we've got these time markers to chart his journey. Very similar to Funder in that sense, starting off each chapter with a time marker. It makes sense to carve up this narrative into time section, into days or weeks. And so off we go with Chapter 9. Let's have it.
For 3 more days we continued traipsing about looking for work, coming home for diminishing meals of soup and bread in my bedroom. There were now 2 gleams of hope. In the first place, Boris had heard of a possible job at the Hotel X, near the Place de la Concorde.
I'll just pause him there before we hear the second. These 2 gleams of hope is a metaphor, isn't it? But that the word gleam has connotations of brightness and light, and it suggests that there's light at the end of the tunnel for them. Now, we've had this before, of course, where they have hope built up, sense of narrative tension, and then an anticlimax afterwards. So we're seeing a pattern emerge here in the way in which the narrative progresses. But that use of metaphor there is one that's quite powerful in terms of heightening the tension.
And in the second, the patron of the new restaurant in the Rue de Commerce had at last come back. We went down in the afternoon and saw him. On the way, Boris talked of the vast fortunes we should make if we got this job, and of the importance of making a good impression on the patron.
Appearance is everything, mon ami. Give me a new suit, and I will borrow 1,000 francs by dinner time. What a pity I did not buy a collar when we had money. I turned my collar inside out this morning, but what is the use? One side is as dirty as the other. Do you think I look hungry, mon ami?
You look pale.
Curse it. What can one do on bread and potatoes? It is fatal to look hungry. It makes people want to kick you. Wait.
He stopped at a jeweller's window and smacked his cheeks sharply to bring the blood into them. Then, before the flush had faded, we hurried into the restaurant and introduced ourselves to the patron. The patron was a short, fattish, very dignified man with wavy grey hair, dressed in a smart double-breasted flannel suit and smelling of scent. Boris told me that he was an ex-colonel of the Russian army. His wife was there too, a horrid, fat Frenchwoman with a dead-white face and scarlet lips, reminding me of cold veal and tomatoes.
Oh, lovely. So, another unflattering description of these 2 people. Definitely one to pull out and compare with Funder's unflattering descriptions of people that she meets on her travels. So here he is, fattish. You've got this sort of, it's not quite antithesis because they're not opposites, but you've got these very uncomplimentary pre-modifiers, short, fattish, but then very dignified man with wavy grey hair, dressed in a smart double-breasted flannel suit and smelling of scent. There's something quite grotesque about him, isn't there? In the sense that he's dressed quite well, but he's overweight and, well, we don't know anything else really apart from he's short and fat, and smelling of scent. But even that sort of seems to be presented in a negative way. It's not that he's uses a good scent, it's just that he smells of scent. Maybe that's not really, it's a backhanded compliment, isn't it? If someone smells too much of aftershave, it's sort of isn't always a good thing. And then you've got his wife who gets even worse treatment. His wife was there too, a horrid fat French woman. Something about the fricatives there of fat French makes it even more, I don't know why I'm saying it in that particular, with that such venom, but the fat French woman makes you say those words with that fricative alliteration there, with a dead white face. Metaphor there, isn't it? Hopefully, dead white. I mean, it's actually chromomorphism when you describe someone as something inanimate or an object. It's the opposite of dehumanizing. Sorry, it's the opposite of personification. It's dehumanizing. So there, he's actually comparing her to something dead, a corpse. So it's called chromomorphism. That's spelled CHREM. cremomorphism or cremomorphism. And it's like when you say someone's a doormat. If you can walk all over them, they're a bit of a doormat. That's cremomorphism. It's just objectifying somebody. It doesn't have to be something dead, but in this case, it actually is something dead. And then what else? Scarlet lips reminded me of cold veal and tomatoes. More cremomorphism there. You could also say it's dehumanizing her as well. It does the same thing. You could say the cremomorphism dehumanizes her, which is the point. So there's something there. But cold meat and tomatoes sounds pretty unpleasant. So everything about that description is pretty horrible. Horrible, excuse me. But look at the pre-modifiers there and the use of figurative language.
The patron greeted Boris genially, and they talked together in Russian for a few minutes. I stood in the background, preparing to tell some big lies about my experience as a dishwasher. Then the patron came over towards me. I shuffled uneasily, trying to look servile. Boris had rubbed it into me that a plongeur is a slave's slave, and I expected the patron to treat me like dirt. To my astonishment, he seized me warmly by the hand.
Now, this plongeur role, which is the job that he has for so long in this section of the book, here this is a hyperbole. We assume anyway. The slave. It's superlative in the sense that you can't get any lower than a slave. It's a really base job. So there's a superlative aspect to that, but also we hope hyperbole, or metaphorical at least. So, describing this plongeur, it sets up the job for later on, and it also sets up this contrast. He expects to be treated like dirt, and then he actually, greets him warmly. But we then do have these very grotesque working conditions coming up.
"So you are an Englishman," he exclaimed. "But how charming! I need not ask, then, whether you are a golfer."
Mais certainement," I said, seeing that this was expected of me.
"All my life I have wanted to play golf. Will you, my dear monsieur, be so kind as to show me a few of the principal strokes?"
Apparently this was the Russian way of doing business. The patron listened attentively while I explained the difference between a driver and an iron, and then suddenly informed me that it was all entendu. Boris was to be maître d'hôtel when the restaurant opened, and I, plongeur, with a chance of rising to lavatory attendant if trade was good. When would the restaurant open, I asked.
"Exactly a fortnight from today," the patron answered grandly.
He had a manner of waving his hand and flicking off his cigarette ash at the same time, which looked very grand.
"Exactly a fortnight from today, in time for lunch."
Then, with obvious pride, he showed us over the restaurant. It was a smallish place, consisting of a bar, a dining room, and a kitchen no bigger than the average bathroom. The patron was decorating it in a trumpery, picturesque style. He called it Normand. It was a matter of sham beams stuck on the plaster and the like, and proposed to call it the Auberge de Jean Cottard to give a medieval effect. He'd had a leaflet printed, full of lies about the historical associations of the quarter, and this leaflet actually claimed, among other things, that there had once been an inn on the site of the restaurant, which was frequented by Charlemagne. The patron was very pleased with this touch. He was also having the bar decorated with indecent pictures by an artist from the salon. Finally, he gave us each an expensive cigarette, and after some more talk, we went home. I felt strongly that we should never get any good from this restaurant. The patron had looked to me like a cheat, and what was worse, an incompetent cheat, and I had seen two unmistakable duns hanging about the back door. But Boris, seeing himself a maître d'hôtel once more, would not be discouraged.
"We've brought it off only a fortnight to hold out. What is a fortnight? Food? Je m'en fous. To think that in only 3 weeks I shall have my mistress. Will she be dark or fair? I wonder. I don't mind so long as she is not too thin."
2 bad days followed. We had only 60 centimes left, and we spent it on half a pound of bread with a piece of garlic to rub it with. The point of rubbing garlic on bread is that the taste lingers and gives one the illusion of having fed recently. We sat most of that day in the Jardin des Plantes. Boris had shots with stones at the tame pigeons, but always missed them, and after that we wrote dinner menus on the backs of envelopes. We were too hungry even to try and think of anything except food. I remember the dinner Boris finally selected for himself. It was a dozen oysters, borscht soup, the red sweet beetroot soup with cream on top, crayfishes, a young chicken en casserole, beef with stewed plums, new potatoes, a salad, suet pudding and Roquefort cheese, with a litre of Burgundy and some old brandy. Boris had international tastes in food. Later on, when we were prosperous, I occasionally saw him eat meals almost as large without difficulty.
That list there, the asyndetic list, just shows the extent of their fantasy and their reverie at the idea of having indulgent, luxurious food and having money to be able to spend on food and to be able to be among food in the restaurants. And they're quite rich foods, aren't they? They're quite exotic, expensive foods: oysters, crayfishes, Roquefort cheese, a litre of Burgundy. There's something about the way in which, I don't know, there's something like a bottle of Burgundy doesn't quite have the same ring to it. A litre of Burgundy seems like an awful lot, doesn't it? That's bigger than a normal bottle of wine, and yet I don't know. It just sounds rich and sort of extravagant and exquisite to have that much food and that much wine, which is the point. Then you have this little shift in tense. Later on, when we were prosperous, I occasionally saw him eat meals almost as large without difficulty. So reminding us that this is a flashback to an earlier time, that things do get better. So it's that reminder of the fact that he's writing this from the present, looking back through his chronology and reminding us that there is a time after this when things get better for them.
When our money came to an end, I stopped looking for work, and was another day without food. I did not believe that the Auberge de Géant-Cottard was really going to open, and I could see no other prospect, but I was too lazy to do anything but lie in bed. Then the luck changed abruptly. At night, at about 10 o'clock, I heard an eager shout from the street. I got up and went to the window. Boris was there, waving his stick and beaming. Before speaking, he dragged a bent loaf from his pocket and threw it up to me.
Mon ami, mon cher ami, we're saved. What do you think?
Surely you haven't got a job?
At the Hotel X, near the Place de la Concorde, 500 francs a month, and food. I have been working there today. Name of Jesus Christ, how I have eaten.
After 10 or 12 hours' work, and with his game leg, his first thought had been to walk 3 kilometres to my hotel and tell me the good news. What was more, he told me to meet him in the Tuileries the next day during his afternoon interval, in case he should be able to steal some food for me. At the appointed time, I met Boris on a public bench. He undid his waistcoat and produced a large crushed newspaper packet. In it was some minced veal, a wedge of camembert cheese, bread, and an eclair, all jumbled together.
Voila, said Boris. That's all I could smuggle out for you. The doorkeeper is a cunning swine.
Just a side note here, nothing you can really do with it, but there's light OTs there when he says that's all I could smuggle out for you, which is clearly an understatement because actually that's an awful lot. He's got minced veal, a wedge of camembert cheese, bread and an eclair. So, that's quite a lot, isn't it? So to say that's all I could smuggle out for you is light OTs. It's sort of humble brag. It's saying, look, you've this is all I could manage, but actually you should be really grateful. So a bit of light OTs there. As I say, nothing you can really do with it in terms of it's Boris's speech rather than Orwell's, but it's worth having there possibly to have if you need it.
It is disagreeable to eat out of a newspaper on a public seat, especially in the Tuileries, which are generally full of pretty girls, but I was too hungry to care. While I ate, Boris explained that he was working in the cafeteria of the hotel, that is, in English, the still room. It appeared that the cafeteria was the very lowest post in the hotel, and a dreadful come-down for a waiter, but it would do until the Auberge de Géant-Cottard opened. Meanwhile, I was to meet Boris every day in the Tuileries, and he would smuggle out as much food as he dared. For 3 days we continued with this arrangement, and I lived entirely on the stolen food. Then all our troubles came to an end, for one of the plongeurs left the Hotel X, and on Boris's recommendation, I was given a job there myself.
Okay, and that's it for chapter 9, and then we're going to pick up on chapter 10 with the anadiplosis of Hotel X being sort of leading the way into this next chapter, but I'll do that in the next one. Okay, bye for now.